my original research that I've been working on with a colleague of mine from Penn State, Dr. Breffney Noon. Breffney and I were in the PhD program at Cornell together, and we are trained in revenue management. But one of the things that we found pretty interesting, particularly as the discipline has been evolving over the last couple of decades, is the intersection between revenue management and consumer behavior. And because as revenue managers, we spend a lot of time, particularly in this era of price transparency, thinking about our price versus the competitor price and what the impact on demand will be. But the consumers, they're looking at our price and the competitor pricing too, but they're using that information to assess value. And if we as revenue managers don't really understand how consumers are assessing value and ultimately making purchase decisions, we're going to miss a big piece of the equation. And what we've seen and felt, I think all of us, is that there's more information now at the point of purchase than ever before. And so the question really becomes, and this is the question that Breffney and I have asked through a series of research studies, how are consumers using all of this information, reviews, ratings, brand, loyalty affiliation, pictures, images, everything, right, along with price to ultimately assess value and make a purchase decision? So that's the question that we've asked and answered through a series of research studies. So if you were here last year, I'm going to reprise some of what I presented last year on the results of the Business Traveler Study, and then I'm going to show you a nuance that we recently did with the analysis that really showed the impact of loyalty on how business travelers in particular make decisions. So you'll have a review for those of you who were here last year, and then we'll get into the new stuff. And the new stuff is pretty new. I've only presented it to one other audience before all of you. So I have worked the kinks of the presentation out, but I'm still excited to hear reactions because it's new, a little bit new to me too. Okay. So to get at this question of how consumers are using all of this information with price to assess value and ultimately make a purchase decision, we designed an experiment using choice modeling. Now, choice modeling is exactly what it sounds like. In choice modeling, you present the study participants with a set of options that have varying combinations of the levels of the attributes that you want to test, and you ask them to identify their preferred option. And as they repeat this with different options, you can statistically assess how they're trading off amongst all those attributes, how they're using those attributes to assess value, and ultimately which of those attributes and the attribute levels are influencing choice. So this seemed a very good fit for the studies that we wanted to conduct. So we set up a scenario. It was basically a typical online hotel purchase. And we were going to have our consumers decide which hotels they were going to book from among options. Okay? Uh-oh. Okay. Back to where I wanted to be. So online purchase scenario, they're trying to book a hotel. We're going to show them 3 options. And the study participants were told that all of these hotels were in equally convenient locations. They were equivalent class of service with similar amenities. Those we figured would probably drive choice, so we were going to control for those. That let us vary the attributes that we really wanted to test and see how they were impacting value perceptions and choice. So for the 3 hotel options that they looked at, we showed them a set of reviews. And the reviews varied on 3 attributes: the sentiment, positive or negative. The content of the review was either about the service or about the room. And then the language of the review was either emotional or descriptive. So 2 reviews. I loved the bed, or the bed was very comfortable. Now, both positive, right? Both about the room. First review is that emotional language. I loved the bed. The second review is that descriptive language. So that's what they saw for reviews. For ratings, the hotel, we used aggregate ratings, scale of 1 to 5, average of all reviewers, kind of a deal. Their ratings were either low, kind of medium, or high. And then same thing with TripAdvisor rank. We showed them a TripAdvisor rank that was either low relative to the market, kind of mid-range relative to the market, or high relative to the market. And the hotels were branded. It was either a known brand or an unknown brand. And then we priced the hotels either a low price, kind of a mid-range price, or a high price. So the 3 options that our study participants saw would have varying combinations of those attributes, and we asked them which hotel they would book. They went through that exercise multiple times, and we analyzed the results. So this was a survey-based, sent to a US population of travelers. So study results definitely US-centric, although I would be interested to hear, and I am interested to conduct this study in different regions of the world, see how things might be different. But this is a US study. Okay, so we did that for a group of leisure travelers first. And then, as we talked to hoteliers and presented the results, we got really interested in comparing the results of the leisure traveler to the unmanaged business traveler, or as we like to call them, the road warrior. So these are folks that travel at least 6 times a year and that have some control over where they book. So they're not overly constrained by a corporate travel policy, so they could be researching hotels on their own, not staying where the company says they have to stay. But for these business travelers, we knew that there was an element that we probably needed to account for, and that is this cartoon, which says, wait, I may have a card showing my loyalty to whatever store this is. So we know that business travelers do tend to belong to loyalty programs. We thought it would be interesting to see whether their loyalty affiliation, their ability to earn points for stays, had an impact on their reaction to some of these other factors. So for the business traveler study, we added a third level to that brand attribute. We asked the business travelers to identify a preferred brand from a list that we provided of kind of typical business hotels in the US, and then they could see that preferred brand or a known brand or an unknown brand, and they went through the study, okay? So 2 groups, very similar setup, and that let us sort of compare and contrast how these folks reacted to all of this information. Everybody ready? We're gonna see some study results. And it's after lunch. And I'm super jet lagged and really wired right now. Okay. And that is why I'm down here, because I would have fallen off that. Okay. All right, so asked a lot of demographic information. First study result, this is why we do research. That completely surprised us was this. So we asked, as one of the demographic questions, how often the study participants read reviews and how much they were influenced by them. 80% of the business travelers said that they read reviews most or all of the time. Only 55% of our leisure travelers said that they did. Now, I don't know, I kind of expected that it would be the opposite. I mean, these are road warriors, they're very experienced travelers. What do they have need for reviews? Business travelers are really keying into those reviews. So the first thing you have to know is that these folks are paying attention. Your most frequent travelers are paying attention. Okay, so that was first. Just to give you a sense, since we are going to talk about the impact of loyalty on business traveler behavior, let me quickly run through some of the demographics about loyalty. Now, this is not a study about loyalty programs, so I'm not going to make any inferences about any of these programs, but it is interesting to see the affiliation of these business travelers. So what we have here is the business travelers in our study had an average of more than 2 loyalty program memberships of any level, and about half of them also belong to a non-brand loyalty program. So this, we gave, used examples of like Hotels.com or Expedia's loyalty program, maybe Leading Hotels, Preferred Hotels. So they were affiliated in that way too. In blue is the list of the loyalty programs that we tested in the study, that we gave them options to pick if they were members or not. These are the loyalty programs in the US that have business hotels as part of their portfolios. So, green column, that is the percentage of participants who hold a card, any card, pick a card, any card from one of those loyalty programs, from that loyalty program, I should say. The orange is the percentage of participants who identified a hotel from that loyalty program as their preferred hotel. So for example, that first row there, we showed on the list of hotels that they could pick as their preferred, we had DoubleTree, Embassy Suites, and Hilton, and 34% of participants picked one of those 3 brands as their preferred brand. That's how you interpret that column, okay? Again, not picking favorites, Jerome. Okay. The other thing that we asked was their loyalty behavior. And this is going to come back again later on in the study, or later on in my presentation of the study. So we asked a series of questions about their loyalty affinity towards their preferred brand. How loyal do they feel? How much do they identify with that preferred brand? And then we also asked, and so here we see an average of about 5.33 on a 7-point scale, which is not a raving loyal feeling, but it's not too bad, right? And then we asked how loyal they acted in terms of how often they stayed with that hotel. So the majority of the participants stayed in the last 12 months with their preferred brand between 25 and 75% of the time. Only 4% consolidated all of their stays with the preferred brand. They're a bit promiscuous, these road warriors. That's where the sex came in again. Okay. And somehow 3% of them never actually stayed with their preferred brand. I don't know what they were doing there, but anyway. Okay, so that was just the demographics. Now we get to get into the results. Are we ready? Excellent. This will not be hard. Okay, first output of the choice model is the attributes that had a significant relationship with hotel choice and the order in which they influenced choice behavior. Okay, so this is just of those attributes we tested, which ones statistically significantly related to choice. Okay, for business travelers, there's our list, and there's the list for leisure travelers. Review sentiment came out number 1 for both. Not surprisingly, the second most impactful attribute on choice for leisure travelers was price, and brand for the business travelers, that's where that preferred brand, that loyalty affiliation came in. But man, there's a few like kind of unusual things on here, like price showing up on the business traveler list, right? These road warriors are not meant to be price sensitive. It's not their money. Interesting. So the next step after you identify which of the attributes are significant in this is to then look at how the levels of those attributes are influencing value of the hotel purchase, right? And ultimately driving choice. So how are these different attribute levels impacting value? Okay, so I'm going to show you a bar chart. The important thing on this bar chart to pay attention to is the size and the direction of the bars. But do not worry, I am here to do the data interpretive dance. Okay, in heels, backward, no. Okay, I'm going to come over here to do this one. All right, this is the impact and changes of attribute levels on value perceptions for business travelers in order of attribute importance. So, top red bar represents the negative impact when the reviews are negative as opposed to positive. That's the negative impact on value. That's how much value is lost and the difference between a negative and positive review. And it's big, right? That's number 1, it's big, okay? Next 2 bars down represent changes in the levels of brand. So we see a positive, blue means positive, slightly positive impact on value of a known brand over an unknown brand. So there's a preference and value associated with a known brand over an unknown brand. That big bar, the second blue bar down, that's where that preferred brand comes in. That's the positive value associated with a preferred brand over a known brand, okay? So that's how they're reacting to brand. Okay, now, here's where it starts to get interesting. Like it wasn't already. The next 2 blue bars, right, 3 and 4, that's the impact of ratings. That's when you go from, like, that's an okay rating over a terrible rating, and a great rating over an okay rating. Positive value associated with that. What do you immediately notice about those 2 bars? The top one is bigger. So there is more value in the business traveler's mind associated with an okay over terrible hotel than there is with a great over an okay hotel. Now that doesn't mean that they don't value great, that's a large bar, but for some reason they're keying in on that okay, and as long as the hotel is okay, it's got a lot of value associated with it in their minds, as opposed to terrible, which I thought was pretty interesting, until I saw the price result, which is that next red bar. Okay, now, here we see the pair of bars is the red one and then the blue one right underneath it. That top red bar represents the negative impact on value when the price is raised to that mid-range over the low range. That's statistically significant. These business travelers are noticing and valuing a deal. Now, that bottom blue bar is not statistically significant. So once the price gets to that mid-range, they become price insensitive. But they like to see the low price. They value that deal. And when they don't see it, there's an impact on value. Must be something about human nature that just loves to get a good deal, okay? And then finally, the last significant attribute is the blue bar that's 4 up from the bottom. That is a small positive impact on value associated with those descriptive reviews over the emotional reviews. So if you think about it, if the business travelers want to know that something is okay, presumably so that they can get points and not get killed while they stay there, then the descriptive reviews are going to be more valuable to them because that can help them to assess what okay means, right? What all these other attributes mean. That's how I would interpret that. So that is the business traveler value behavior. Let's look at the leisure traveler. A little bit different. Okay, same dance. I'm going to do it on this side of the room, though. Here we see, again, that top red bar is the negative impact of negative reviews over positive reviews on value. It's big. The next 2 bars down, that represents raising price. So lots of loss of value associated with raising the price from the lowest to the kind of mid-range. Big time value loss associated with the mid to high. So at every change in price, every raise in price, there's a significant loss in value for leisure travelers. This should not surprise us. They're very price sensitive. The next pair, so that's the 4th red and the first blue bar there, that's ratings. The difference between okay and terrible is not significant. So our leisure travelers are not noticing any difference between okay and terrible. They only associate value with great over okay. So that's very different to the business travelers. It also adds a nuance to the research that's out of Cornell, the Center for Hospitality Research, that shows that you get pricing power with every 1 point increase in a rating. My research would suggest that that only happens on the top end. So it's only when you get towards the 3 and 4 ratings and you're able to raise those ratings that there would be pricing power associated, because for leisure travelers at least, they don't care. Business travelers may be a little different, right? But leisure travelers don't care. So you got to know that. The TripAdvisor rank behaved the same way. So it was only a high TripAdvisor rank over that mid-range one that mattered. To the leisure travelers, they didn't notice or value any difference between at the mid and the low TripAdvisor rank. And then finally, for those leisure travelers, you see 3rd up from the bottom, that is a slight positive value associated with a branded hotel over an unknown brand, right? A known brand over an unknown brand. So a little bit of value there for the leisure travelers. Okay, so knowing this, now we can look at combinations of these attribute levels and assess the overall value of that purchase and compare and contrast it. Okay, so I'm going to show you now equations. But it is just addition, so we will be okay, not too hard. What I want you to pay attention to similarly when I show these equations is not the sum of the equation, but how that changes when I manipulate attribute levels. Okay, so we're going to look at magnitude of change. And you will see what I mean in just a second. Okay, so for our business traveler, the ideal hotel has positive reviews from a preferred brand, highest possible ratings, lowest possible price, descriptive reviews. We're anchoring at about 1.5 as the value associated with that. Don't worry about what that means. Just watch what happens when I raise the price of this hotel. So now I can raise the price. Everything else is the same. Everything else is ideal. I raise the price, and we see that there is a drop in value of, I don't know, like a quarter. It's not too much, but a little bit, right? Remember that it was that deal that the business travelers valued. It was only the 4th most impactful variable, but we still see some loss in value. So that's how this analysis works. So the next thing I can do is look at the most impactful variable, which is the reviews sentiment. So if I take the review sentiment from positive to negative, now we see a pretty significant impact on value. So for business travelers, the overall package, even with those, with the other attributes that they prefer, we lose about half the value of that hotel purchase when they see negative reviews. And this is what happens with the brand going from preferred to unknown, and then the ratings dropping. Kind of an equivalent effect there. So when you look at these results, you start to see how the decision-making process in the business traveler's mind is working. And if you start to relate that to your own market conditions, you can find opportunities in here. So for example, that unknown brand, right? So say that you're kind of a small player in the market against some of those big players with their robust loyalty programs, lots of members, and they're kind of trading on that. If your UGC is better, significantly better than those guys, and you're willing to maybe offer a little price incentive, you might attract some of that valuable business traveler demand, right? They're not consolidating their stays with the preferred brands anyway. They may be willing to give you a try. And if they like you, they could come back every time, they're in your city. So understanding the sort of whole portfolio of the market and what your business mix looks like, you can find opportunities in this behavior. And that's how I would kind of think of it. But it's also interesting to see how the leisure travelers compare in this analysis to the business travelers. So let's look at that now. Okay, so there's the ideal choice for the leisure travelers. Positive reviews, lowest possible price, high TripAdvisor rank, high ratings, known brand. It's about 2. Again, don't focus on what that means. Okay, but let me just raise the price, and we'll see how that value changes. So I'm going to go from lowest to highest. Okay. Pretty significant drop in value, went from 2 to like 0.5. So these guys are very price sensitive. With every raise in price, we lose value. So that's the impact of price on leisure travelers. So you got to be careful, because these guys, really paying attention to price. But look what happens. Look what happens when holding everything else equal, including that low price, I take the reviews from positive to negative. You only had a second to see it. That hotel loses all value for those leisure travelers. They simply will not pick a hotel with negative reviews. Will not do it. Doesn't matter what you do with price. The low price cannot overcome the negative impact of that negative UGC for leisure travelers. So we've got 2 groups here, 2 market segments behaving very differently. We already know that we have to think about now our price, our reputation, and our business mix when we figure out how we're building these profitable pricing strategies. Okay, but remember at the beginning I told you that this was going to be a study about price, UGC, loyalty, and the road warrior. So let's get back to that. So because we measured all of these different demographic variables, this gave us the opportunity to split our sample out according to some of these demographic attributes and see if the behavior varied. So we got very interested in this attitudinal loyalty that we measured here, right? This feelings of loyalty towards the brand. Because there's been some research and some practice that we've seen lately that would indicate that if you foster those feelings of loyalty towards the brand, then that's going to result in all those outcome measures we love, like likelihood to recommend, likelihood to return, value, that sort of thing. So we wanted to see if loyalty towards the brand also influenced the road warriors' reactions when they were evaluating a hotel before stay, right? We knew about these outcomes after. We wanted to see what happened before. So we took that attitudinal loyalty and split it out into 3 equal groups. So it ended up being like folks that were kind of neutral towards that preferred brand, folks that were somewhat loyal, feeling towards that preferred brand, and then folks that were like ravingly loyal towards that preferred brand. We conducted the same analysis, those same steps that I talked you through, on these 3 groups separately to see if their behavior changed based on their loyalty feelings, okay? So I'm going to talk to you about that now. All right, so first thing is the attribute overall. All right, so what we saw, the numbers 1 through 4, that's the order of importance of these attributes. It's similar to the first study. Review sentiment came out first, brand second, ratings third, price fourth. But what's interesting is what we saw was the behavior was the reaction, the value perceptions, and value drivers were the same for all 3 groups on brand and on ratings. The same behavior that I described before, where the preferred brand had a lot more value associated with it as opposed to the known versus unknown, and then that okay versus terrible and great versus okay reaction. Same for all 3 groups, but they reacted slightly differently towards the review sentiment and the price. So I'm going to show you how that worked. We're going to do the same analysis that we did before, where we're going to look at changes to the overall value of the hotel with those combination of attributes. So basically, for all 3 groups, the ideal option with the highest value associated was the same. It was the positive reviews, preferred brand, highest ratings, lowest price. That's going to be our baseline. And then we're going to measure the negative impact on overall value as we change those levels, like we did before, on review sentiment and price. And this time I'm going to show it to you as a percentage, because we're going to look at all 3 levels, okay? Very interesting stuff. Okay, first result. This would be the review sentiment. Okay, now, another data interpretive dance. We're going to start at the bottom of the chart, and I'll kind of interpret it. So you see there's the baseline positive reviews. The sloping downward line represents the percentage change in overall values when the reviews go from positive to negative. So starting from the bottom, you see that yellow dotted line is the neutral, and the blue solid line is the somewhat loyal. That is the same. Those are statistically the same. So we see there, I don't know, around a 50% loss in value associated when they see those negative reviews of overall value. But that green dotted line are loyalists, slightly less sensitive to those negative reviews. So the overall hotel loses less value for our loyalists when they see negative reviews, slightly less sensitive to negative reviews. Not that they're not sensitive, but they're a bit more forgiving than the other two groups. Good news. Okay, here comes the head scratcher, so to speak. Price. Yeah, this one's kind of a mess. We spent a lot of late nights trying to figure this one out. There's a lot of lines jumping around here. A lot of effects we weren't expecting. So let me break it down. This time I'm going to go top down, okay? That top line, the solid blue line, that represents the somewhat loyal group, attitudinally loyal. Statistically, there's no difference between the loss in value associated with those three steps. You see it practically on the chart, but statistically, they're not price sensitive. Their value perception is the same at each of those levels, not price sensitive. Okay. The dotted yellow line in the middle, that's the neutral group. They do value the deal. So the difference when the price goes from the lowest to the mid-range, that is a statistically significant loss in value. They notice and value the deal, but then they become price insensitive after that. So there's no difference between difference in the value perceptions between the mid and the high range. Our loyalists, that bottom line, that dotted green line, man, they love the deal. And there is a big time loss in value associated when the price goes from the deal to that mid-range price. When they compare the two hotels, they love the deal. And then they become like incredibly price insensitive after that. So they'll pay whatever they have to pay to stay there, but they're going to punish you in value perceptions when they don't see a deal. Crap. This means that our most loyal customers are expecting us to give them a low price, or they would love it. And I was trying to figure out kind of like why that would be, because you would think that if you just love the hotel, like you would just want to stay there and you just pay whatever. There's a stream of literature, a stream of research in the fairness literature that suggests that the more investment that consumers put into a relationship, the more they expect something back from their vendor, the companies they're working with. So I think in this case, these in my study, the deal was the only thing we were really offering, right, for these guys, the kind of the quid pro quo for these loyalist consumers. Generally, when they travel with their preferred brand, they're going to get the amenities that we associate with loyalty, you know, the Wi-Fi, the upgrades, whatever. So, you know, it's possible that those would substitute here for that low price. It is also possible that, you know, our most loyal customers are expecting that they're going to get the best prices from us, and they get a little irritated when they don't. So I think more research to come on that one, but very interesting impact. So what we have here is the good news, our loyalists are going to be more forgiving of those negative reviews. The bad news is they're more price sensitive to just the deal than any of the other groups. So remember, in this case, we are talking about the lowest price in the market for these guys that they're responding to. After that, they're price insensitive, right? So if you're thinking about playing around with this, it has to be the lowest price for these guys to respond. It's not just take 20 bucks off, right? The lowest price in the market. Okay, so this is my infographic, net out the results of this study, standing in a room full of revenue managers. Now that I'm on kind of your side of the business, I just have to say, good luck with all that. Man, it is getting really hard to do what we do because you have to understand your price position in the market. You have to understand your reputation position in the market. You got to know your business mix. And it really helps if you understand kind of their loyalty, behavior, and affinity as well, because you may have some opportunities within that. So what we were talking about in the panel earlier becomes pretty relevant again here. If you're not working with those other groups across the organization to gather the data that they have and understand what their strategies are, you're probably going to miss out on some opportunities to really maximize revenue and get those effective pricing and positioning strategies. So, okay, time for shameless self-promotion. If you liked what you saw, I have a book. And 2 of you have an offer for a free copy under your chairs. So I taped like 2 little notes that say winner. And I'd be happy to sign those books for you. Check the empty chairs at your table. There's 1 on each side of the room. Someone may want to check all the chairs at this table. Okay, anyway, the book is also available on Amazon. If you guys are interested, I got another one coming out next fall. So, thank you for indulging me in the shameless self-promotion. It's okay, it's under that chair right there. It's just, yeah. Okay. All right, so that's me. Any questions? Yeah, very good. Okay. Yay! Yes, Rachel.
Thank you. Just a question on the pricing. Was there any component when you did the pricing to introduce strike-through? No. So it was just a standard retail. There wasn't any looking at that perception of what it was, what it is? Nope.
This hotel was, yeah, so good question. When they saw the results, it was this hotel is $195, this hotel is $235. That was it. Yeah. With the combination of attributes associated. Yeah, good question. I'm very interested in that strike-through thing. I think that's a, yeah, okay, yeah.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for the presentation. I was surprised when I sort of looked at the results, as you mentioned as well, you know, the difference between the business traveler, their reaction to price and leisure travelers. So I just wanted to understand what's sort of the sample here, who did you really poll? Is it is it largely North America?
Yeah, so it's 100% US population for domestic travel. So that's one thing to understand. But beyond that, they were pretty representative samples, pretty, evenly gender split, age split, some of the socioeconomic variables representative of that sample of those groups. But the study was conducted in the U.S. with U.S. brands and on U.S. Travelers.
So what's your view? Would it be any different for, let's say, this part of the region?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you guys tell me, because you live it every day. I suspect there would be some nuances, maybe impact differences, but I don't know that hey, look, I could be wrong. I was wrong with all of the hypotheses I made for this study, but I'm thinking that that sort of directionally, I would expect similar type behavior. But I don't, I can't say for sure. Does anyone have a hypothesis they'd be willing to? Oh, no hypothesis, okay. Hey, listen, if we are planning, by the way, then I will get to you. We are planning to conduct regional studies. We just, I started a new job, so I figure I'll do my day job for a while until they know I can do that before I take on another hobby besides the books. But yeah, so we're definitely, so more to come on that. And, if I'm allowed back next year, then maybe I'll be able to present it then. Okay, we had a question.
Okay, great. Just add a point here. Bernard Quack from GHS, so I deal a lot with loyalty program. Okay. So that's my business. Very happy to see the results. And it's quite true. So no hypothesis I have, but it's all, through the years we work with different hotels. I think at the end of the day, in 15 years of my business, we're dealing with human beings. So no matter they're US or Asia, they're human beings. Yeah. So all human beings behave the same. I think everybody wants the best deal. No matter you're American or Singaporean. Yeah, I think that's the basis.
But how they define what that deal means, I think, is what's interesting.
Sorry?
Right. How do they define what the best deal for them is?
Well,
that's what I think is interesting about this study.
So
yeah, they want to get a good price, but they're looking at that whole package too, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a member, I always say this: if there's no reason to be a member, right? So as if non-member get $100 and if I'm a member I get 120, then something is very wrong. Then why do I pledge loyalty? I would expect something better than that. Yeah, I think that is a general behavior. But I don't have a scientific behind, it's just data over the years, but you have crystallized it. Thank you.
Very good.
Yep.
Maybe,
Well, that's
can I quickly ask, or actually elaborate on the strike-through pricing? We actually recently did a study for our own organization to see. We took a sample set of a couple of hotels, and we had sort of like 2 weeks. 1 week you said, I'm going to sell it $150, and it's my bar rate. And the other week it was 20% off or 30% off, and it was $150. So same price point, but with a different way of displaying it. And we actually surprisingly didn't find a lot of correlation. We expected that the strike-through pricing would have given a lot higher conversion. We actually didn't find it. Slightly more on the OTAs than on our branded sites. But even on the OTAs, it was more the price point that determined the conversion than the promotional tagging towards it. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, thank you for showing.
Another question is, did you look at relative pricing? Because all of this is, did you ask a question about a specific situation whereby, this is the review, this is the price and all that, and whether you would pick it or not? Or did you look at relative ranking, relative pricing and all? Because
It was a little bit of both, Chet, because basically what they saw was they had a situation. The leisure travelers were told they were taking a weekend break in a city center. The business travelers were told that they had a meeting in the city. So that helped kind of anchor their expectations of what they would pay to stay in the city. And we had 3 options next to each other, and they each could have had different or the same prices depending on how the randomizing of the active levels happened. So we set a little bit of expectation in mind about what they might pay, and then they saw these 3 prices relative to each other with if that helps. So so that was the idea: is what are they trading off to get that price? What are they sacrificing, or what are they paying for? Is what we're trying to get at with all this different, the different packages of attribute levels that we saw. Yeah. It's a really good technique for that. I mean, typically it's used to set price for new products. So you show a price and then the list of features of the product, and you can kind of see how much the participant base is willing to pay for, a bigger size or a, shinier wrapper or whatever it is. And we're using it this in a slightly different way, but that's what, to get at that value of those attributes relative to the price. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it's a very good research, but I also think of what if you look at different angle, like you have luxury market, you have mid-scale, will the research look at differently?
Yeah, that's another iteration. Yeah, so we controlled for, we basically was a 4-star business-friendly hotel. We controlled for that in this study because we figured it might make a difference. So another possible iteration of this would be to look at the scale, chain scale, and see. I have seen some research that indicates that the consumers for those different types of hotels do react differently to some. There's this really interesting one where, luxury travelers were kind of driven by review sentiment, but if there were too many reviews, then they were kind of turned off by the purchase, less likely to purchase because they felt that, maybe the exclusivity wasn't there of this luxury purchase. So I've seen indications of different behavior. I'd love to look at that. Yeah, I think there's something to that too. See, there's lots of work to do. I'm never gonna have time for my day job. Yeah.
Being an academic, I love these kind of things. So I'll try and stay away from academic questions, however, on this one. But
Yeah, I'm gonna be avoiding him during cocktails later. But
we know from research done in the service quality area that service quality doesn't really equal loyalty.
Yeah.
At least an awful lot doesn't.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I saw in here, and I'm wondering if you would interpret it a little bit, because it does seem like reputation management, though, does affect loyalty, or is it loyalty affecting reputation management? Which are you finding?
Loyalty is affecting reaction to reputation, yeah, but only slightly. So those loyalists, in other words, and remember this is on the pre-purchase, so this is reacting to other people's service experience. The most loyal customers are going to be slightly more forgiving. I would hypothesize that these are folks that would read that review and go, well, that's not my experience with that brand. That must just be a cranky customer because I know the brand and I know that they treat me better than that, kind of a thing. So I wouldn't, so I would say that, yeah, it's more of a influencing their reaction to reputation as opposed to driving, reputation or vice versa.
Yeah, that lends
Yeah.
to the issue of level of the brand too,
Yeah.
as to whether it has more of a difference at the higher level or lower level.
I'd say that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that, we were pretty consistent in the content of the reviews, the language, the content, and I think it would be really interesting, another iteration of research in this area, to look at whether topics within the reviews influence behavior. My classic example of that is that if I saw a review that said my kids love the pool, I would never stay at that hotel because I've made that mistake before and been overrun by kids. I don't travel with kids. However, some people that would be a huge positive, right? So it's negative for me, positive for someone else. If the hotel understands those reactions, then there's some segmentation strategies that they should probably be, and positioning that they should probably be doing. So I think there's so many nuances to this that, like I said, it's going to keep us busy for a while. But I'd love to dig into that level too. And I know some of the reputation vendors are kind of experimenting with some of that too, but I think that would be really interesting. Yes, in the back.
Just a quick question about the responded to reviews. Some are positive, some negative, and we see many GMs are posting their response. And if you really look at details, most of it is like copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. So have you looked at this basically response and how it's affecting the pricing and how the customer or consumers look at it? This is like really care or what's the
good
effect?
question. So I have not, and I did not study that. However, I have seen some research that indicates that the percentage of time that the hotel responds, particularly to negative reviews, is positively associated with the performance metrics that we love, like RevPAR and occupancy and that sort of thing. So it seems like it's a good idea, but I think we have to be careful that we're not doing the copy-paste job and losing that kind of genuine. So this would just be advice as opposed to something that's empirically proven, but I think everything I've seen would indicate that responding is a good idea, but how you do it, the devil's in the details, right? So, yeah. And I think that I've heard that there's some research that's going to be coming out soon with some of those effects in it, so we'll keep our eye out for that. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard that some folks are working on that problem. Hopefully we'll get some insight from it. You good? All right, thanks everyone. I'll be around.